Hello YouTube, Transcendence 6 is almost here along with Bahamuto, Selphie, the launch goddess, well not quite yet, and Golbez, the saddest character in the history of sad. In this video, before you pull on Caius, Golbez, and Selphie LD, I'm going to give you some things to go over and think about before you use your limited resources. If you're not familiar with my channel, I play both JP and Global, and I use that knowledge and experience to form my opinions. I also give my personal plans near the end of the video to put some skin in the game, give players an example of how to think. I want to hear your plans too, so go ahead, go in the comment section, leave a comment with your plans for the banner and the event. While you're there, be sure to like the video, subscribe to my channel, also hit the bell so you don't miss a video. I read all the comments, but if you want to make sure I reply to your comments for sure, you can become a channel member. $1, you also get some emotes. You can use these emotes in the comment section or in my live streams. I've been streaming The First Soldier recently, but my main stream is Ranting Hour every Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern. It's fun stuff. You can check out the playlist in the description for more of the VODs. There's a lot to talk about for this banner. 3 different upgrades. So let's start with Caius, who's really the star of the show, the new BT+. Caius's role is that of a damage dealer who also has instant breaking capabilities on his debuff, and he also has 4 different debuffs that he has to manage, so he's good at blocking out enemy buffs potentially. His rework serves to update his damage. Skill 1 is a triple HP attack with 20% splash at the end and refund in the middle, and skill 2 is a double brave plus HP that refreshes all his debuffs and is 100% AoE. His skills are not as powerful if they are not inflicted with one of Caius's KS debuffs, but that will almost never be the case, so I'm not going to talk about those. He also received an LD board rework. So previously, Caius would only instant break them if they had his Doom debuff active. Now the condition has been extended to having any of Caius's debuffs active. The attack gets refunds in the middle of its HP attacks. Caius gets some personal stat ups, including Brave and HP damage up. These also stay if he loses his Heart of Chaos overhead. If you're not familiar with the overhead, it's a gimmick that'll lose to 13. But basically, Caius can tank something lethal once, and the overhead goes away. And previously, if he'd lose out on some offensive stats if this went away, but now he just keeps the stats permanently, so now it's even more of a gimmick. All of the debuffs that Caius inflicts now are extended one more turn. The big thing here is now he gets 3 turns of Doom on every application. And lastly, on his LD board, every time the Doom debuff goes down, it will break the enemy. So before you had to time it, you had to worry about it overlapping, etc. Now you can reapply at your leisure, because every time the enemy acts, if the Doom debuff goes down on them, it will just break them. Oh, and he also gets a free skill at the start of the quest, so he can set up efficiently. Caius's BT has a lot going for it. 1, the voice line, Bahamuto! First off, he multiplies the party break bonus by 6. 500% for you math nerds. Assuming he's green, he gets party stolen overflow 50%, party HP cap 20%, party HP damage 20%, and party brave damage 50%. And to tie it all together, every time that Caius takes a turn, the enemies will get rebroken after his turn ends, assuming that one of his debuffs is active. So that 500% break bonus up I mentioned earlier, this ends up being like a battery of 20k to the party, and this is not able to be increased by Brave Gain, but it's also not affected by Brave Gain reductions. So all in all, it ends up being a nice offensive combo while also providing some untaxable Brave battery. It is 6 turns, so it's a little on the short side, but it's definitely very powerful in the right hands. Not a bad BT effect at all. That attack hammer with an even Brave and HP split, provided you have Caius' LD boards. His calls actually do get buffed with the instant break part of the Doom debuff ticking down, so that's something to consider. Otherwise, his calls are untouched. Ooh, that was a mouthful. Now let's actually break it down into information that is useful. Caius' strengths are in his breaks that are a lot more easier to proc now due to Doom breaking on every turn instead of being a countdown. Countdown was cool, but functionally not so good, but now it's a good debuff. This makes him 2 for 4 on good debuffs. Max Brave down is, it could be good, it could be not useful, whatever. And the poison, whatever, can save your life sometimes. But now Doom and defense down 50% are good. Provided he has BT+, he is a pseudo battery for the party with the untaxable break bonus. He's also a pseudo delayer because on his turns the enemies will get rebroken no matter what. Those instant breaks after boss turns can counter any post-turn Brave Gain shenanigans. And he's also doing damage that scales well because he has a lot of Brave hits and Brave gains and HP tats, etc. As for weaknesses, Caius is another case of without BT+, they're going to be tragic and likely benched after their cycle. While his Doom debuff is powerful in the right scenario, it's also niche, so if you're not really letting the bosses take turns, you don't have his BT up effect active, then it's not quite useful. And the defense down and the Doom are good debuffs, but Brave down and poison, you could probably live without those, and they're just clogging up slots you could be using for other debuffs. That's always the annoyance when using Caius, and it doesn't change here. While he does have a lot of Brave hits, those Brave hits don't necessarily hit very hard, so he really kind of needs like attack up and Brave damage up to really hit those caps. It's kind of like Sephiroth, where his Brave hits don't feel like much and it can add up to a lot. There's a much higher ceiling that you can't hit with proper support and buffs. The untaxable battery is nice from the Brave bonus shenanigans, and I think it can stack with Bahamut Summon potentially, or you could just battery normally like a regular human being. And it honestly feels a bit gimmicky. I mean, other than that, like the BT stuff is pretty standard. Brave damage, HP cap, HP damage up. A weird amount of overflow for a DPS on a burst effect, whatever. So not a horrible BT effect like a certain Golbez, but it's kind of just standard run-of-the-mill. Potential Caius teams, there's a huge mix. I mean, he's a DPS, so he likes attack, brave damage, and HP damage up. You just want to make sure the people you bring alongside him and the calls do not have too many debuffs. Lena goes well with Caius, so does Orin. I think Vayne can abuse Caius's BT effect with the break bonus and get a lot of party battery off, but I'm not quite sure of that. Really the big thing to watch out for is not too many debuffs, because if you whiff one, if you got too many calls, then it's going to feel really awkward and you're going to hate yourself. You can also go the brave gain route for Caius on his skill 1 specifically, because it refunds 100% of HP damage done, so this can actually end up refunding a lot in the middle and doing a lot of damage. But otherwise, yeah, pretty standard stuff. Outside of his cycle, the only fights that Caius really seems useful in, off the top of my head, this is not exhaustive, is actually the Machina raid, because the orb on that one is to extend your buffs by 1, and his skills, I think it's his skill, it's either his skill 1 or skill 2, extend his current buffs so he could take that orb by himself. Otherwise, just treat him as a damage dealer with a gimmick. Next up on the Caius banner, the new LD we're getting is Selphie. Selphie is a defensive support. She has heals and battery and tons of it. Her rework gives her skill 1 drain 4 more uses. She reduces the enemy's brave by 100% of her M brave, which is a lot. And now the attack is a full 100% AoE. Skill 2 wall now becomes an instant free turn. The brave damage reduction is increased. And on both of her skills, now the generics she has are all rolled into one framed buff. This buff also makes it easier to launch enemies, which is going to tie into her LD, which we're going to talk about now. Selphie's LD turns her and the party members into launchers. The LD attack sets the enemy's brave to 0 if they're not already broken. It delays them 2 turns and launches them while applying a new debuff Rapture. This attack is 100% AoE and it does not consume Selphie's brave. Provided you have Selphie's LD boards, this new buff gives the party 30% M brave regen, 20% brave gain up, which is standard among the brave gainers, Maria, Porum, Agrius, 20% party HP damage up. And similar to Caius, whenever a party member is in the middle of a launch sequence, they will do a brave gain, 30% of their M brave, and they get an additional 10% HP damage up in midair. This gain is not nearly as much as Caius in midair, but Selphie does not also have to be partaking in the launch for it to take effect. Only the buff needs to be active. The actual debuff makes it so whenever somebody attacks the target, they will launch. The party also gets 5% of damage done in midair as refund afterwards. Downside though, and this is what makes Selphie C90 busted, but not now, so C80 Selphie. Right now, when she releases in Global, her debuff will tick down Edward sleep style if the enemy is attacked with this debuff up. In JP, you see a lot of Selphie abuse after her C90 because the debuff doesn't go down, but on release, it will tick down. Don't get it confused. Her Heimer Plus is encouragement, so she can abuse a Pestle RF if you have it. If you don't have it, it's not a big deal. Spheres don't really matter that much, honestly. But her split on her Heimer Plus lands in the HP direction, which is awesome because she has a lot of mid-air HP damage modifiers, and this will stack nicely, and you'll be able to hit those caps easier. Her regular call is wall, and we've had access to this for a while. Her LD call is super nerfed and super sad. It does do a launch, but it does not drop the debuff, and it only delays all the enemies 1 turn. So let's break it down. Selphie's strengths are the consistency and launch. She is now firmly in the camp of Caius being a launch enabler, but Selphie brings more heals and battery, while Caius brings more offense. Selphie's offense, though, now is a lot better. She can actually brave shave. It's not a break, but she can brave shave on her LD and her drain, her skill 1. She can spam skills a lot harder because she has so many more drains. She's way better at healing, and it does damage as well. Wall being instant turn is such a godsend because you can set it up, maybe quick charge your EX, because if you didn't know, Selphie's aura buff also helps extend, or it helps recharge others' EXs faster, so that makes her a lot more consistent in the party for people who can take use of that. And the brave gain up for herself on encouragement and for the party on her buff make her a much more valuable slot in the party. Her LD debuff is applied for 4 turns, so that's 16 theoretical launches guaranteed for the enemy, and because of her new buff that makes it easier to launch enemies in the first place, you'll at least be getting a lot more on, even if the debuff falls off during the battle. Weaknesses. Selphie's damage is not good, even though it did get upped, and she's a lot more turn efficient now that wall is free. It's still, and that debuff going down is a huge negative, and I can see why they didn't give it to us, because C90 Selphie, when the debuff doesn't go down anymore, is broken. Unless you're stacking brave gains, like Selphie alone, it's not going to feel great, that mid-air brave gain that she helps you do. Wall, they refuse to make wall 100% debuff evasion, so you're still in the hands of RNG occasionally. and Wall being instant turn, and then Aura being instant turn. Selphie can actually eat into a lot of Lufenia orbs if she acts too fast, especially because there's high turn rate on Drain as well. So while she is an enabler, her turns don't feel all that great. Additionally, unless you're pressing her Brave Plus, which you have no reason to press, she's not going to be doing any Brave shaving, which is not a problem necessarily, but it's just something to keep in mind. It's just honestly, she just doesn't feel quite complete to me. Like, it just feels clunky with her new launch edition. I mean, it's a cool gimmick to have, but it just felt so out of place with her, to be honest, in my opinion. And I loved using Selphie beforehand. And dear God, this is an even bigger complaint when you get to C90. But just launching all the time like that, and her just dancing around in the consecutive turns makes battles take way longer than they need to. Ugh. And while she can delay bosses, it's much harder to set up a good launch with Selphie, just because she doesn't have the turn manipulation that Caius does. There's pros and cons to both of them. For Selphie's potential teams, you're going to want launch-centric teams to take advantage of the mid-air buffs she gives. Ideally, she's with other delayers and turn manipulators so you can get the most consistent 3-man launches. Selphie and Quistis actually pair very well together. You double up on the Brave gains, double on the delays, and then those launches that go into effect can be pretty fast if you set them up nicely. She can also pair up with Sid Reigns because he will be taking advantage of those mid-air things she's doing. She is really bad with turn stealers because they will eat through her debuff for minimal output. I mean, just imagine Vayne, Force of Willing, and you burn through all of Selphie's 4-turn debuff and you gotta reapply it again. Ugh, not very good. She likes people that makes their turn count. But if you can stack enough modifiers and HP caps, you can get a lot of explosive results with Selphie. Selphie's got quite a few useful fights in the future. Saz's LD mission dungeon where you need to crit. Selphie can't hit that orb, but it's the Gladio bosses, and they do the giant Brave game where you gotta break them eventually, so she can set them to 0 for someone else to go in for the break. Ursula's event where you need to be at 100% of your max Brave on a turn. She's obviously path of least resistance for Transcendence 6, right? That's all I got off the top of my head, but there's probably more. Lastly, we have Golbez, who is very, 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 very sad. I'm gonna just say it right now. Golbez is the worst BT plus in the game. I don't know. His C90 needs to be spectacular. Maybe they're gonna drop him with FR at the same time. But man, he needs some serious work because this BT plus, this rework was not it. Golbez's role is that of a magic plus physical at the same time damage dealer. It was a gimmick that kind of didn't age well, so they overrode it by making him Imperial and hit Dark Weakness on all of his stuff. He's just dark damage and nothing more, which is not a bad thing. The bad thing is that he does not do enough damage. His kit from a couple months ago has not been reworked aside from his LD board. His LD board, get ready for it, wait, ready. He got more overflow on his LD attack, more overflow on his LD buff, 10% more HP damage on his LD buff. His HP damage refund after doing everything was up by 10%, and he gets 30% more stolen Brave damage up. This is the buff where you get more Brave than you actually do. So this is cool. Now it's up to 50%. So if Golbez does 100 Brave damage, she'll actually get 150 Brave. That's all he got. Just a minor untaxable Brave damage up, and 10% more HP damage and 10% more refund. His BT plus is also not doing him any more favors. The duration is still 4 turns. He now has a total of 50% party Brave damage, at 30% more Brave cap for a total of 50% Brave cap up, which is actually pretty big, and 80% attack up. This is honestly very random. I mean, freeze, an uncleansable, or like a field effect as a freeze, is a very broken ability to have, so it makes sense why they didn't extend it, but why didn't they also give him more damage? Anyways, attack up and Brave cap up, that's what you're getting from Golbez. 80% is a lot, but Golbez's strengths are that he imperils his own element and can do weakness damage. Unconditional freeze on his BT and BT plus is very powerful as it can save you in a lot of situations. He also has self-brave and HP damage resist for some reason to help keep him alive. I don't know. And so attack up behind the BT plus helps the party hit harder. I'm stretching. Golbez is awful. Here are his weaknesses. Everything else. He already had a hard time capping his damage. He doesn't imperil. He doesn't frame his imperil, so he can get pushed off depending on your debuffs. You can cope into bringing a Zande call, but then you're bringing a Zande call instead of something that actually helps you do more damage, like Kurasame, Jack, Maria, Gabrant, etc. He's got all this Brave damage cap, but he's got the stolen Brave up thing, so he's not hitting it by design. And his skills didn't get reworked, but he's a damage dealer, so you can't even cope into saying, oh, at least he got a useful utility, but no, he didn't. He's bad at doing damage. And the leaps and bounds you'd have to go through to make him hit his max damage cap, you could just bring someone else and invest in someone else's BT and do it way more easily. How do you release Power Crept? Come on. Potential teams just boost his attack and Brave damage because he needed it so badly. And useful fights, I think he extends his own buff on his LD, so he could be used for the Machina raid potentially, but Machina just a million damage on his HP attack. Why would you use Golbez there? Honestly, if Golbez was the only BT plus you had in your inventory, I'd rather you just save them and do something else, because he's really bad. This is me being objective here. He's bad. I don't know why anyone would invest him unless you're the hipsterest of hipsters. On the bright side, he does have a potential future, maybe during C90, but that doesn't save everybody. Maybe he has a future on FR2, but again, that doesn't save everybody. So right now, Golbez is just terrible, awful, one of the worst units they have ever released. Ugh. So now my plans for this banner. I'm skipping all of it. I don't think I need any of them, nor do I want them. I actually got all really turned off Selphie from using her in C90 and JP just because of the constant launches. And I actually got her on this Caius banner in JP, and I never used her after this because I really never felt the need to. I mean, it's not like she really shown anything. When I gave fight examples, I was reaching hard. She is a brave gainer, so that's nice to have, but the launch thing just not, the debuff going off or down all the time felt horrible. I got Caius's LD to get through Transcendence 6 because of the debuff condition, which I'll go over in a bit, but this was the only fight I used him in, and I never touched his LD call or calls ever again after this, so that felt like a waste. I had a blue Golbez from when he released on Divine Alexander because I luck sacked hard, and then he became turbo ass and I regretted it even harder, and Bosch is the other one in his banner, so these banners are all around just not great. If I were to pull, I would probably repeat the same thing of using these characters once and then forgetting about them forever and ever again. So nothing from me. Savings. Oh, this video's getting long. Now let's talk about the actual stage. This is notoriously one of the hardest stages to date in JP. This stage is pretty mechanically packed. The left side is the easiest one. It's a turtle and a kraken, and the orbs are +5 on sap and +8 on break. Caius handles this pretty steadily because after each of their turns, they will just break. You can also just let them act and they can sap and it's good. Orin can notoriously solo this with, I think it's a Ferris RF, I don't know, but that's kind of overkill, but if you want to do that, go ahead. This is the easy one and it rolls over because it's just regular Lufenia. The right side is a little bit tricky, so it's to do 3 consecutive launches, and they have an indicator to let you know which launch you're on so you don't get confused. Why they couldn't backport this to Vayne's event? Whatever. But you got to do 3 in a row. It's the Sync Castle, and also at HP thresholds, it likes to teleport or move itself right before the current person's turn. Selphie and her debuff can guarantee you get those consecutive launches, and she is easily the path of least resistance here, but there are ways to do it without her. Time to lean on your calls and Sid reigns. If you have enough launch calls and you have enough turn shenanigans going around, it's entirely possible to blitz through this, no pun intended, because Jekt is really good here because it's single target, but with some planning, you can just navigate it without Selphie. If you have Reigns, this is a lot easier because he can set up a launch, he can bring everyone back in front, and then you could have 2 launch calls on your other teammates. Say, I think both of Lael's calls launch. You could do launches with Cloud's call, Dark Knight Cecil's call, use Pandemonium Summon so you're more likely to launch. And on top of that, remember, it's base Lufenia, so if you bring a strong enough single target BT+, like, haha, Jekt, you actually won't have to do that many launches and you can just kill the thing. Quistis is good here for the single target delays. You can send them back and then set up launches. Sid Reigns is good here, obviously. So if you burn them on tier 5, if you're stuck on there and you're not fully sold on Selphie, consider putting him here as well. There's also some weird tech you can do where if you throw Caius's debuff or Caius's buff on someone with off-turn damage, you can make the boss launchable. So I know there was a video somewhere of someone putting Caius's buff on Trey, and Trey's arrow rain came down, and the boss was launchable after each turn because the arrow rains kept coming down 3 times and making the boss launchable each time. There's ways around it. There's the creative members of the community that aren't me are going to do some cool stuff on the stage and show you don't need Selphie for it, so just stay tuned for that. The middle is really where things get toxic, and I hated the stage so much. Just a warning, I remember saying on tier 5 save Bartz for this tier, and I think I specifically said save Bartz for this tier just because he's a good aura bot and he will help you do damage and stay alive and stuff, and somehow that got mistranslated, it appears, into you can Reigns Mao this tier, but it is not easy in the slightest, because you got to deal, it depends on your calls, because you got to deal with the conditions and a bunch of the fidgeting. So Sid Mao is not the path of least resistance here. It is possible, but there's going to be an Excalibur video, a Serial video, probably a Dystopia video, because I watch all those guys. They're probably going to pull it off, but it won't be me. The first wave is the Agrius bosses. They're annoying. I don't think they cleanse often, but the actual thing you got to deal with here is to do 8 debuffs in 1 turn. This is not easy. I think the only characters that can do this are Laguna with an RF, Yuffie in party, Ferris as a call or in party, Kefka, and Caius. They're selling Caius very hard with this wave. So if you don't have one of them in the party, you're going to need to have them as a call, or you're going to need to kill it really quickly. I don't even know if it's possible to DPS race this part here. So if you don't have Ferris call, you don't have Caius call, I don't know if their base calls can do it, but without, I think you kind of need to do them at specific intervals, and it's +8 and the max is +15. Using them as calls means you got to be really, really specific. And these guys get really, really tanky. It's either, I don't know whether it's high defense or high brave reduction, but you definitely feel the stats up on these guys. They hit you hard and you can't hit them hard. The second wave doesn't actually have an orb, but it's got a lot of debuff conditionals. When it's got less than 2 debuffs, you can't do any brave or HP damage to it. When it's got less than 5 debuffs, it's going to hit you really hard. Brave and HP damage are both increased. When it's got less than 7 debuffs, it will warp after every one of your turns. And while it has less than 8 debuffs, it gets attack, defense, and speed up. These all stack. So if they have 0 or 1 debuffs, you can't do damage to them. They get brave and HP damage dealt up. They warp after every one of your turns, and they get a personal attack, defense, and speed up on top of that. Ew. And to wrap it all up, they cleanse twice. I think it's 80% and 50%. I don't know the exact thresholds. I could go back and watch my old video and figure it out, but I don't feel like it. Somebody will know. Shout out to Excalibur, follow his channel. He'll have the boss infographic and Dissidiainfo. Shout out to y'all, because I don't be remembering stuff. So ideally, you're going to be debuffing them constantly. You want them to be at 8 debuffs. Oh man, they can grant themselves an HP regen buff too, but it's generic and you can push it off or steal it, so that's okay. But yeah, let loose on the debuffs. Oh, that's right, I forgot to mention Ami's call. Ami can also fill up their debuff slots on the first wave and this wave, and also delete them, but yeah, keep those debuff slots full or you're going to be in a world of pain. Throwing some debuff ERFs on your units could potentially be helpful. Like Orin, I think if you throw a Laguna on him, or not Laguna, but something else, so he can apply him AoE. So in the middle, when they warp, Orin can debuff them and get their debuff count up. Sephiroth's call will persist through the cleanses, which is also very nice. Ferris call, Ami call, Caius call, or Yuffie in the party is really good because she can throw down 8 debuffs all at once. So if you got the debuffs active, these bosses aren't bad. The problem is getting the 8 debuffs active. So if you got a Yuffie and she is free, you should use her here because I definitely am. In JP, I ran Caius LD, Orin, and Bart's BT. This is where he came in clutch because he helped us do actual damage. And I prayed with my Ferris call and my lack of Omnitelian call. Made it through somehow, but it was not a good time. Jekt is really popular here because he kills things really quickly. Caius BT is great if you got him. Ace is good here. Ace can be good here. Quistis can delay them, so you don't have to deal with things, provided you have enough debuffs active. So there's options here. It's just not a very fun stage, honestly. In GL, I'm planning to bring my blue Orin, my blue Yuffie, and my blue Jekt, and I'm going to send them to the Shadow Realm. Yuffie's going to hit the orb on the first wave and keep them debuffed on the second wave, while also providing defense down, and Jekt is going to go nuts. Orin's going to provide some debuffs as well and heal us and keep us safe. And hopefully I don't have to see this stage for much longer. This video is too long, so let me give my pull advice and then call it quits. If you already decided, by all means, ignore me. But this is for some people who are on the fence or aren't quite sure if they should be going in on this banner or not. I'm going to give you some things to think about. Per usual, try the stage first. Try and ask other people. Use Call to Arms and Discord on Reddit to try and figure out teams so you can save your resources. Look up ways to do these fights without pulling, like for real. Like if you have the necessary debuff calls, Ferris, Omnitelian, if you got Yuffie in the party potentially, if you have Caius' LD already, you probably have the tools to do this fight. You just need to figure out how to do it. If you don't have any launch options period and you're newer, this is probably a decent banner to grab just for the debuff calls maybe, and Selphie being a launcher. Selphie also gets way better on C90 to the point of brokenness, and that is some people's cup of tea for those units who can kind of trivialize stuff, but be warned. Remember when I shouted out L making fights take forever? Selphie also makes fights take forever just because of the constant launching, and it gets mind-numbing doing it over and over again. And I blued Selphie in JP, and I kind of regret it because I figured out that I hate using her because the launches going off all the time is so unengaging. My god. So a good reason to get this banner, to go on this banner, would be to get a debuff call or a debuffer in the form of Caius for the party for the middle stage, and a launcher for the right side if you're stuck on that side and can't do it without Selphie. That's a reason to go in here. But if you're not going to green Caius and you already have enough debuffers, I wouldn't recommend chasing those LD. And if you're on the fence about Selphie, again, keep trying to do the right stage. If you can do it without her, you should probably skip her because she's not all that great in my opinion. I think she's kind of mediocre until her C90. Like I said, I'm skipping. I don't think I'd use either of them out of synergy. And I honestly kind of hate using Selphie. And I'm not going to chase Caius' BT. I'm not going to green him. He's green or bust. So after that, he'd be just gone. He's about to get C90 in JP. So we'll see what that entails. But even then, ugh. And Selphie's rerun was with Charlotta during Zack cycle in JP, but we have no idea if that's going to change in GL. So don't plan around that banner because it might change. Oh, 25 minutes. I'm killing it here. Not even going to plug myself aside from like the video, subscribe. Let me know your plans, what you think about this event. I think I might, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think if I should like chop the character evals up into different videos, because I have to do the work regardless, but people's attention trails off during these videos. But I'll check the analytics through people poke around these multiple events. Oh yeah, and by the way, Golbez, just don't touch that banner, period. Even if you like Golbez, skip him, honestly. I'm half joking, but Golbez is awful. Bosch is power crept. Not worth, and he gets higher in plus, but who cares? Yeah, that banner is just a total turd. Stay away from that banner at all costs. Lena Vanille might pop up somewhere around here, and we'll see how that goes. But I don't know, man. I don't know. So yeah, I'll catch y'all later, and good luck on T6. Hopefully I can get my clear video out of Orin Ject Yuffie fast enough to show people the power of the youth. But yeah, I've talked way too long. I'll catch you guys later. Have a great one. Peace.